Welcome to the Retirement Playbook with Hughes Retirement Group. I'm Andy Santoro, and over the next half hour, we'll discuss planning for a successful retirement and why so many people in this country are missing the mark. Here's what's in store: building your retirement plan, a written retirement plan. We'll discuss income taxes and growth strategies, plus how market volatility can change your outlook. With me are Rick and Granger Hughes, the father-son duo who are part of the team at Hughes Retirement Group, a Chattanooga firm that focuses on preparing people for retirement. Rick and Granger are also popular radio show hosts. Thank you so much for joining me today. It is so good to see both of you.
Absolutely. We're glad to be here.
Fantastic. So, Granger, year after year, the studies show the #1 fear of people preparing for retirement is running out of money. A new Morningstar study backs that up. It found that if you retire before age 65, you have a 45% chance of outliving your savings. Can you talk to me about what this means with building your own personal pension? Where do we even start?
Well, you mentioned the word pension there and building your own pension. I mean, you look at the article where Morningstar is talking about 56% of workers, which is about 70 million people, don't even have access to 401ks or 403bs, much less pensions. And pensions, you know, that in the article it cites that's one of the biggest reasons, the elimination of the pension, is why that concern is kind of arising. So 62 is the earliest you can retire. So you alluded to there at 65, you know, retiring prior to that can create some issues. So there's a 54% financial shortfall if you retire at 62. And the problem with that is, it may not be a situation where you want to retire. You may have to retire to take care of a family member. You may have been laid off. You may be sick yourself. So there may be situations where you're forced into retirement.
Rick, once we hit retirement, the paycheck stops, but the bills don't. How important is it to replace your paycheck in retirement?
It's very important, Andy. If you think about it, whether you get paid weekly, bi-weekly, you're used to getting that check, you know how much you have coming in, you know how much is going out, and then all of a sudden you move into retirement and you're not sure anymore. So most people, again, are relying on Social Security. Some still have a pension, and the next question is, do you have another stream of income? Now, if you've had a 401k, let's say, maybe that's a stream of income, maybe an annuity is a stream of income. But the biggest thing is you need to know, how much do I have coming in and how much has to go out. So one of the biggest things that I would say for folks out there, obviously you've got to have, know your net expenses that you're gonna need to have each month.
People that have had pensions in their retirement or throughout their working career, they're used to that paycheck.
Right.
So you said the paycheck, you're used to it. So now all of a sudden, if you do have a 401k or you have a 403b, you're in a situation now where you have to distribute from that account, which is a probability-based approach. It's not just guaranteed income coming in every single week or month. So it creates a situation where now, how much money do I need? The market's down 30% this year. How much can I take? The markets are up this year. Should I take more? So it creates those situations where you're in a probability-based approach where you're not as predictable in terms of income in retirement.
And you're also thinking about Social Security is fixed income,
right.
A pension is fixed income. 401k money is not necessarily fixed, just like Granger said. If the market's up or down, you're not
right.
sure how much you have there. How long will it last you?
So you're basically saying to have a diversified plan to count on, not all your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Absolutely, and when you talk about diversification, I mean that can be from investing in the market, whether it's U.S. equities, it could be bonds, it could be a lot of different things. It could be from a tax standpoint, from a risk standpoint. So there's a lot of different ways that we look at diversifying a portfolio rather than just buying and selling stocks.
Right. Well, let's talk about annuities. I love how you've referenced hard and fast studies a few times. That helps us, verify everything you're talking about. Makes us feel, secure. Annuities. I've read a study that said people are happier with annuities. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's interesting because you hear a lot of people, and we have people come into the office all the time that say, hey, I don't want an annuity. If
right.
we teach a retirement class and we'll come in, we'll test their portfolio, I don't want an annuity. And we'll look at their portfolio and they'll have 2 or 3 annuities. And so a lot of times when we're describing someone, hey, do you want principal protection? Do you want a steady stream of income? That's something that they want, but when you phrase it with the word annuity, sometimes people can back off a little bit. But the thing is once again, just like a pension, just like Social Security, it's creating your own personal pension. It's creating that predictability in terms of income in retirement.
If you think about Social Security is an annuity, okay? They're guaranteeing you a lifetime payout. And most people would not turn down Social Security. It's just annuities have had a bad name back in the 90s. Again, they're totally different than they were at that point in time. So again, it is something to look at. We're not saying everybody should have an annuity by any means.
So it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all process.
Correct.
So speaking of the process, talk to me about how we can even getting the conversation started.
Giving us a phone call, go onto our website, hughesretirementgroup.com. There's a lot of resources there from an educational standpoint. You can access information on our radio show as well. So, but give us a call, 423-641-0999. We'll be happy to sit down, and the first meeting would be complimentary.
I love that. First meeting complimentary. You say you take a really education-based process through this. Is that right?
It is, yeah.
I
So
love that.
we're very education-centric. He was obviously a teacher for years. My mother was a teacher.
Really?
And you know, he was raised by his grandparents. He's always had a heart for education, and I've kind of carried that on as well.
I love that. If you can make it make sense to me, which you are, then you're doing well. So 423-641-0999, hughesretirementgroup.com. Now, Rick, you had mentioned the business is education-centric. What does that mean? Tell me about your background and what that means with Hughes Retirement Group.
Well, for me, Andy, I was a college basketball coach for 25 years.
Wow.
So I was either an educator in the school system or just strictly a basketball coach. I was an assistant basketball coach at University of Florida.
Wow.
I coached at Lee University for the men's basketball team. I also coached a developmental team for the NBA. So when I transitioned in 2005 and got into this business, I always said I do not want this to be a salesy type job.
Right.
I want it to be education, because I believe if I can talk with someone, I believe they're smart enough, as long as I don't try to talk over their head, that they can understand what we're saying and they can make a decision that's best for them and their family.
I love that, because this is an intimidating, confusing topic, but it's vital, especially when we talk about people outliving their savings. So you feel like this could set you apart in terms of your coaching clients?
Well, absolutely. You know, obviously, our show is Retirement Playbook. Okay,
right.
We took a spin-off of that from coaching, because I have people in our community all the time. They'll say, "Hey, Rick, do you miss coaching?" And I said, "No, because I'm still really coaching. I'm just not using a basketball now. We're using, you know, financial and Medicare and that sort of thing to be able to help people."
That's great. Now, earlier we talked about having a diversified retirement plan, why that is so important. So let's talk about Medicare, and why is that often overlooked and why is it important?
Well, I think most financial advisors, they, again, farm Medicare out. They don't do it themselves. We've been doing it since 2005.
Wow.
Okay, so
That's
we
20
feel
years.
like that we know what we're doing in
Right.
that area. Medicare, it's changing each and every year, and we have to keep up with those changes and certifications and that sort of thing. And a lot of people, they'll look at Granger, and I'll say, Granger's been in the business since he was 18 years of age. Now, he's only 35 now, okay? So he's been doing it a long time. He's been licensed. But some people will look again and say, well, he's young, what would he know about Medicare?
That's
so he's
right.
been doing it a long time. But Medicare can be very, very confusing. And I'm going to say we dumb it down. I do not want anyone to ever walk out of our office and say, I didn't understand what he said. And we've got a system that we use, and most people, when they leave, they go, well, you made it so simple for me to understand. And so that's something, again, that we pride ourselves in doing.
And Granger, you're many years away from needing Medicare yourself, but what do you feel in the method of your dad teaching you and educating you about Medicare, how do you feel it sets us apart? What would you tell the viewers? Encourage them to call to learn about Medicare through you.
I mean, look, we've all bought a car before, right?
Right.
And it's not usually the most enjoyable event. It feels very salesy and pushy. So
It does.
it's one of the things we've always wanted to kind of avoid. Now, speaking of education, yeah, I got licensed at 18. He wouldn't let me join the business, though, at 18. So
sure.
I still had to go to school.
Right.
So he is a big proponent there of education. But I do think it sets us apart in the sense that, you know, years ago we were doing, you know, retirement seminars and dinners and things of that nature. And we wanted to create an avenue where people could come in and get educated without feeling like they're going to be sold something. So that's when we started doing retirement classes, doing different YouTube educational videos, and obviously educate on our radio show as well.
Right. So let's talk about signing up for Medicare. It seems like there's a lot of conflicting information out there.
Well, let's think of this. When you turn 65,
Okay.
you're eligible to sign up for Medicare, even if you're working.
Is that on day one of your birthday you can sign up?
Actually, whatever let's say your birthday is March 23rd. Your
Okay.
Medicare would start on March 1.
Oh,
They move it back. The government works on the
Right.
first day of the month. So obviously you're eligible at that time. We have people that continue to work and they're on Medicare. If they want to stay on their group insurance, they can. They would only get Medicare Part A. If they're going to go on full Medicare, they'll get Part A and B. Now I won't get too detailed on that at this point in time. We can talk to people about that if they want. But again, at 65, you're eligible to do that. You've got really the option of choosing a Medicare supplement, a Medicare Advantage plan, or a prescription drug plan, okay? So there's different options out there. And that's where I go back to educating. We're going to educate you on the A to Z on how supplements work, A to Z on how Advantage plans work, and then we're going to say, now, which one do you think works best for you?
Right.
It doesn't matter to us because we represent, again, almost all the major carriers out there. And here's the next thing that's very good. There's no cost to them for us to do this, okay, on the Medicare side. So if they choose a supplement, usually there is a monthly premium they pay that insurance company to. If they choose an Advantage plan, there are premiums out there that are $0 a month. So it just depends on what they're looking for.
So you're a coach and you realize each player has a different skill set. So you're having to coach almost individually even though you're with a whole team.
Yes.
So talk to me again about the process of consulting with you and how it's not one shoe fits everyone. There's many options people have, but it's important to get started.
Absolutely. Typically 3 months prior to you turning 65, you can sign up for Medicare Part A and B.
Okay.
You need A and B in order to be able to get one of these plans that was just mentioned, okay? We help people actually get signed up if they need that. They can obviously go to the Social Security office. They can call 1-800-MEDICARE, but they need Medicare A and B. Now, we'll say this, A, if you've worked 10 years and 40 quarters, there is no cost. You've already paid in all of those years, okay? But Medicare Part B, the standard premium in 2025 is $185 a month. Now, every American pays that unless they can prove they're in poverty, or we have people that pay as much as $600 a month because it's based on their income. But the standard premium for most Americans is $185 a month that they typically will take out of your Social Security check. If you're not drawing Social Security, then they're going to bill you for it.
And one thing I would add on that, because you mentioned individuality.
Right.
That individuality can actually bleed over into husband and wife. I mean, the husband may need a supplement, the wife may take a Medicare Advantage plan. So it's very specific to your individual needs. And the one thing that we've always looked at Medicare as a piece of retirement, just as tax planning, just as Social Security income planning, risk reward, all of these are pieces to a successful retirement.
Well, if anyone's overwhelmed, let's talk about how we can meet with you all and experience this education, coaching centric,
Well, I mean, we've said obviously they can give us a call there, and I know the number's on the screen, or visit our website or hit the QR code there. They can reach out to us again. And for Medicare, again, I want to remind people there is no cost to meet with us to be able to educate and help them. We've got a full support staff. So if you say, hey, I'm trying to get a hold of Rick and Rick's not available because he's here, today doing television, somebody else in our office obviously can help them.
Right.
And we're big on customer service and helping our people through the entire process. Not to sound morbid, but when you sign up with us, you're going to be with us till the day you pass.
I love that.
Because we're going to take care of you.
Right. That sounds like you have a really good education-centric, vibe in the coaching aspect. I know that's going to come through to our viewers. So we can find you at HughesRetirementGroup.com, calling 423-641-0999, complimentary consultation, and you have offices in Chattanooga and Cleveland. Rick mentioned that people could pay different premiums for their Medicare, and that leads me to a tax question. Is overpaying Uncle Sam a real issue for some people?
It is, and I think honestly, retirees don't realize that they may find themselves in a higher tax bracket in retirement. You've got different interactions of money. If you've been working somewhere for 40 years and you've had, the same job, essentially the same paycheck, you're just getting a single W-2, you take it home, the tax is already withheld. There's not a lot to it. But then you get to retirement and you're getting Social Security, you're getting IRA distributions, maybe you have capital gains, maybe you have a pension. So you have all these different interactions of money, and you actually find yourself bumping up that tax bracket where you're essentially paying more. So how is that a problem? Well, Dad mentioned earlier, we talked about that take-home pay, your net check. What are you going to spend in retirement? Well, if you don't really have a plan of how much you're going to spend in retirement and then you get there and the government's taking more than you thought, it's not going to go as long as you wanted it to go.
So how can we fix this? It must be pretty amazing to see some people's plans or lack thereof, and you can show them, hey, I can save you a lot of money in taxes. It can be fixed?
Well, it can. I go back to education again. It's important, again, when folks sit down with us and we're able to look at their personal situation, we can pretty much map out and plan, you know, potentially where their taxes are going to be. Now, that depends on the tax code. Presently, we're under President Trump's tax code. It's scheduled to expire December 31st, 2025. Okay? If Congress does nothing, it will revert back to President Obama's tax code, which means taxes are going up for about 3%, okay? But now that President Trump obviously was reelected and you've got a Republican House and a Republican Senate, the goal is they would like to make these tax cuts permanent, but we'll see as time goes on.
And Andy, I would say, you know, you talked about diversification. So
Right.
I think something that is often overlooked is diversifying from a tax standpoint.
Right.
So essentially, no matter where your money is at, you've got three different types of money: taxable, tax deferred, and tax free. So taxable money, that's going to be our money that we've gotten ordinary income off of interest, you know, which we didn't have for years, but now all of a sudden we're getting 5% in a savings account. So people all of a sudden they're getting 1099s because they're not used to getting actual interest for letting the bank use their money. Or you've got capital gains at the 0, 15, and 20%. So that's taxable type money. The next type of money is tax deferred. This is the most common that we see because this is the 401k, the 403b, the 457s, where you've worked for somebody and they've essentially just deducted from your paycheck and put it right into a retirement account for you. And then you've got tax-free, which is after tax, where basically it works similar to taxable, but the only difference is when you put that money in, all those gains are tax-free in the future. So finding the right combination of those three buckets of money can substantially change your retirement if you position them correctly from a mathematical standpoint.
Well, what kind of money could people be losing without a tax strategy?
So, I mean, generically speaking, I mean, you could be losing thousands of dollars. And one of the things, and I know Trump has tossed us around about eliminating Social Security taxation. One of the things that you want to look at is if those interactions of money, when we talk about the IRA distributions, maybe your required minimum distribution age, where the government is forcing you to take money out of your retirement accounts, all the pensions, the taxable, that could cause your Social Security to actually be taxed. So people get into retirement, let's say you're making $40,000 a year of Social Security. You could be in a situation potentially where 85% of that becomes taxable. Well, what's it taxable at? It's taxable at your marginal rate. So that's where those rates come into play. If we revert back to those old ones, you could be getting a 3% tax increase on just Social Security, which is going to impact you when you think about longevity. You think about 20, 30 years of Social Security. That's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifespan.
And again, I've always heard Granger say this: once you write that check to Uncle Sam, it's not coming back.
That's right.
So that's why it's important to have a tax strategy.
Right.
Have someone that you can work with, obviously an accountant, a tax attorney, that sort of thing, that can help you in this area to hopefully you're able to keep more of your hard-earned money and not give it away to Uncle Sam, because they surely will take it.
And I do try to make that comment there, Dad. I mean, you know, we think about 2008. We think about the stock market
Right.
collapses that we've had. Everybody's worried about them. They panic about them. But historically, what have the markets done? They've returned to normalcy. They've even reached new highs. But if we don't properly plan for tax rates in the future, because taxes, whether we like it or not, are historically low. They've been much, much higher in the past. But if we don't properly plan for that, as he mentioned, once the check is written, there is no, hey, I'm going to hang in there and hope that the tax bill comes back. It's not coming back. It's gone. The markets might come back, but improper tax planning, it won't.
And I want to say this: the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, has said many times that in order for us to keep all of our programs that we have, okay, education, food stamps, that sort of thing, that taxes may have to double in the future. Okay, now we're not hearing the Republicans say anything about that at this point in time. So again, it's important to have a game plan. You're not just thinking about today or tomorrow. You're thinking way down the road, because retirement may be 25, 30 years. So you got to ask yourself your question: where do you think taxes will be 20, 25 years from now? Do you think they'll be where they're at today, or do you think they're going to have to go up?
Right, because you've mentioned you can't plan on when, you know, the unthinkable could happen and you die. People are outliving longer than they expect.
Yes.
Fantastic. So talk to me about the consultation process, how we meet you if we're feeling overwhelmed with our plan, if we're hoping maybe there are ways we can save money. How do we meet with you?
Well, on your screen there, you should be able to see our telephone number. You can give us a call. You can visit our website, hughesretirementgroup.com. or scan that QR code, and we'll set an appointment with you, and it's complimentary. We'll be more than glad to give you as much education as we possibly can offer you.
I love that. And it's never too late, right? Like, let's say someone is already retired, they're receiving Social Security, Medicare. Can they come to you to have you take a look at what they're doing right now?
They can, and those are the folks that come to us. I mean, look, we deal with people generally who are 55 and older. They're in that retirement red zone, or they're already retired.
Okay.
Because there's a huge distinction between growing our wealth, which is the accumulation phase, and distributing our wealth, which is withdrawing from it.
I love that.
And Andy, one thing I want to say, if you visit our website, we have classes. We have a class coming up at Cleveland State Community College. We're at Chattanooga State, a lot of different schools that we go to. There's no cost for that, so it's strictly educational. It's usually a 2 to 3 hour class. So visit our website and see if we've got any upcoming classes in your area. We'll be more glad to have you.
I love that. HughesRetirementGroup.com and 423-641-0999. Continuing on with taxes, before the election, you talked about considering an after-tax Roth conversion to take advantage of some of the lowest tax rates in history. Do you still think converting to Roth is the way to go, the right thing to do?
I mean, I do. Once again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Everybody's in a different situation.
Right.
But when we're teaching these classes, and we've been teaching classes for I mean, almost 10 years now, maybe more than 10 years, it's one of the things we've been talking about. And I think that even though there's talk about keeping current tax rates, maybe even lowering them, you still have to look at the national debt, and it's unprecedented where we're at. So the likelihood of taxes being higher in the future, I would anticipate probably pretty high. So if you do have an opportunity today to pay at today's tax rates, would you do that? And that's kind of the question you got to ask yourself. So if you have 401k money, the thing you've got to realize, if you have $1 million, let's say, if you withdrew all of that today, you're going to pay 37% in tax on that money. It's going to be income to you. So would you want to take a portion of that and start strategically shifting it to what's called a Roth IRA or a Roth conversion, where let's say you're in a 22% tax rate, you're paying taxes at a 22%. Well, we mentioned earlier where in retirement you've got the different interactions of money, you may be in a higher tax rate. So if you've paid the taxes today and taxes do go up in the future, you've got a little bit of leverage there to kind of utilize that tax-free bucket so that you're not having to necessarily creep up into that next bracket.
And we'll say this in our educational classes. Would you rather pay taxes on the seed, pay taxes on the harvest? The way the government has set it up, they've set it up to collect on the harvest because they're allowing you, again, to do a 401k or a 403b or whatever, and you're able to put more money in than you can into a regular traditional Roth IRA. So again, that's what you've got to ask yourself. The biggest thing, again, as Granger just said right there, you're going to, if you decide to do a Roth, you're going to pay the taxes today, okay? But there's a mathematical way that hopefully you can keep your taxes low, but it just comes down, pay now or pay later.
So there's some who say Trump wants to make tax cuts permanent. We don't know what the future has in store. What would you tell our viewers thinking about that? I
mean, I would say don't plan for them to be permanent, but take advantage of the rates today. Because once again, I go back to that debt. I mean, we were talking about this years ago when interest rates were around 1%. We've crept up to now we've seen it where interest rates are. We're paying close to $1 trillion in just interest on the national debt. Well, how much revenue does the United States bring in? Let's say they bring in $6 trillion a year. Well, we're spending $8 trillion now. So we're in a deficit every single year. Somebody's going to have to pay the piper eventually, and who's that going to be? So I think if it could be advantageous for folks out there, if you're in a favorable tax bracket right now, which could be 10, 22, could be 24, where you could start making some shifts from that 401k traditional to a Roth.
So Roth conversions can reduce your long-term tax liability. Can you talk to me about that and maybe how people can learn how you walk them through these steps in their retirement planning?
Well, again, we're going to take them through some of our software, tax clarity. We want to find out how much can we take from that IRA or 401k. For example, Granger said you could have $1 million. You could convert $1 million today into a Roth conversion, but I don't believe you want that tax bill. So what we're trying to do is if you're in a 12% tax bracket, if possible, we're going to try to find out how much you could move out of there that potentially would not raise your tax bracket. Or if it does, it only raises it slightly. So we're not trying to hit you all at once where you're paying a bunch of money in taxes. So there's a smart way to do it. And that's, again, I know I keep coming back to education. Right. That's what we're going to do with folks is we're going to lay it out and educate you on what your best options are. We'll never tell you what to do. We may advise and say, here's what we recommend, but at the end of the day, it's your money and your decision.
Right, and yes.
And you talk about that take-home pay, you know, like we've mentioned numerous times. If, you know, a lot of times we'll have people that'll say, oh, I wish I would have known about this when I was 20. Well, it didn't exist. Roths have not been around forever.
I love that.
So if you look at 401ks, you know, we kind of mentioned that 37% there, the government is a business owner with you in that traditional 401k. They want you to load it up because there's going to come a point in your life, the required minimum distribution age, where the government makes you take money out of it, whether you need it or not. So you could be sitting there in a situation where you say, I don't even need this 401k, I've got other sources of income, but the government's actually going to make you tap into that bucket.
Now, how do you all stay current of what's changing, and how do you educate yourselves as retirement planners to what's taking place in the world?
I mean, it's an everyday process. I mean, obviously, we're reading educational things and keeping up with what the changes the IRS and the government are making. So it's an ongoing process. And one thing we always say, a lot of people will try to do their own retirement planning. And we would say this: if I had a knot on the side of my neck, and Andy, I know you do television right here, and I say, Andy, what do you think this is right here?
No.
And you say, well, I don't think it's anything, Rick. I wouldn't worry about it. So I take your advice and I do nothing about it, and later on in life I find out it's cancer.
Oh, I feel horrible.
I should have gone to a doctor. I
Not
should have
me.
gone to specialists that knew what they were talking
100%.
about. So if it's retirement planning, again, come and see us. We'll be more than glad to try to help you.
So you're education-centric, Granger, you're Rick's son. Talk to me about your interest in this and how you learned so much.
Well, I mean, obviously he's been a huge help. You know, I wanted to be in the business when I was 14 years old,
Wow.
so that's why I got licensed when I was 18. But like I mentioned earlier, he wouldn't let me go straight into the business, so I had to continue to go through school and pursue that education as well, which benefited me obviously in what I'm doing. But I just think from a standpoint of, look, I mean, you know, dealing with people in the age group that we're dealing with, they want to deal with somebody they can trust, and whether that's us or somebody else, that's okay. But we do want to create avenues where they can go and get education and not have to worry about being sold something.
And you are local. Where are your offices?
We're off Shallowford Road here in Chattanooga.
Great.
And in Cleveland, we're off Peerless Crossing.
Okay.
So again, been there a long time, and we'll be more than glad to sit down with you and discuss whatever you need to discuss in that area.
A wealth of resources you offer. A former Division I basketball coach can walk you through your retirement planning. How much does it cost to book your first consultation?
It's complimentary.
Fantastic. And
Yep.
how do we get a hold of you all?
Well, the best way, again, and I think it's on your screen right there, is our telephone number. Visit our website, hughesretirementgroup.com, or hit the QR code, scan that. We'll get an appointment set, and that first appointment will be complimentary.
And it sounds like your website has a ton of information. It has YouTube videos. You have classes
Yes.
at Chat State and Cleveland State.
Yeah, in various schools. We've been at Tennessee Wesleyan. We've been in a lot of different
I love
places.
that.
And again, when we go in and do the educational classes, there is no cost to the student.
That's
And
great.
our students primarily are about mid-50s up to about age 70 or so.
HughesRetirementGroup.com, 423-641-0999. Go ahead and give them a call. Book these great guys, Rick and Granger Hughes, and find out how they can help you with your retirement planning. HughesRetirementGroup.com.